Chill.
Hello Marvel Legends and welcome back to another episode of Displaying Model Behavior, the world's strongest action figure video podcast. Sorry, I've been listening to the Let's Fight a Boss podcast and that's how they do the intro. They're finally back after a long hiatus, so big shout out to those guys. Folks, it's time for another Legends Legacy review. And this is what I'm really excited about. I feel like I've got a good feeling about this review. I think we're in for a good time. So let me introduce to you, without further ado, the Rhino Wave Kraven the Hunter, who I refer to as the Tom Selleck Kraven, with his, big, full, bushy kind of moustache, and I always associate just the moustache, but no, he's got the full-on soul patch going on there as well. This dude is a handsome boy. Look at him, chiseled features. So, Kraven, as I have started to do with these reviews, gonna give you a little backstory with the character, because obviously you have no idea who Kraven the Hunter is. So, Kraven the Hunter, Sergei Kravenov, from the Kravenov family, was part of the rich Russian aristocracy, and his family lost all of their wealth when they had a whole Russian Revolution type thing. I think with the Marvel sliding time scale, that must change a little bit, but in the 60s at least, that was his story. So he was of Russian royalty, essentially. And then he came to the US to, be a famous hunter and continue his honorable hunting kind of practices. That was what he grew up kind of focusing all of his attention on, I suppose. And he was that classic sort of hunting for honor type person. And it came to the fact that he wanted to hunt the biggest game, and that being Spider-Man. So, of course, it's the classic story of, he wants to test his mettle against the best fighters in the world or the best prey. So very, very predator-ish. But of course, Spider-Man bests him time and again. And actually, no, I'm getting ahead of myself. I forgot. It was the Chameleon. Yes, work backwards, Dave. The Chameleon hires Kraven to come and take out Spider-Man. So Kraven's been going all over the world hunting things, being a bit of a dick, really. I mean, who likes hunters? F those guys. So, the Chameleon, I was going on a soapbox there. The Chameleon hires Kraven to come and hunt Spider-Man. And of course, Kraven fails, as the villains are oft to do. And eventually, at some point, Kraven takes some, mystical herbs and, KFC style secret herbs and spices, and it gives him sort of enhanced strength and superhuman abilities, and doesn't make him like super jacked up powerful, but it makes him, I think it's kind of like a super soldier serum, kind of like the mystical new age version of a super soldier serum. So just heightens all of his abilities, and he becomes a regular foe of Spider-Man. Until eventually, I'll sort of hold him up here, because this is still an action figure podcast as opposed to a, figure history timeline. But Kraven, his biggest, most famous story, of course we know, is Kraven's Last Hunt. We've got the older, the more recent figure, but the older, more classic-looking Kraven here, I'll do a comparison later, who represents Kraven's Last Hunt. So what happens is, finally, Kraven succeeds in defeating Spider-Man, in which he pretty much just shoots him. And it was an interesting kind of moment, because Kraven kind of gets the drop on Spider-Man, and he has a rifle, and Spider-Man's like, what are you doing? You don't use guns. Like that's not fair. This isn't how you operate. And he's like, today it is, pal. Boom. And he thinks, I don't know if he knows that he killed Spider-Man, or he thought that he killed Spider-Man, but either way, he buries Spider-Man and then takes on the mantle of the Spider. He figured like the only way to really defeat him was to become him. So Kraven puts on the Spider-Man costume and goes out to do what Spider-Man did better than Spider-Man. So Peter's like in a coma buried under the ground, and Kraven is just meting out some harsh justice. He kidnaps Vermin, I think. I reread the story and I can't remember. It involves Vermin and Kraven kidnapping Vermin and being horrible to him. What can I say? There's a lot of comics, I lose track. But essentially, Spider-Man digs his way out of the grave and he goes to confront Kraven, but unfortunately, Kraven has met his end already at the barrel of a shotgun. That was Kraven's last hunt. He fulfilled his destiny. He I know, right? He defeated Spider-Man, he replaced Spider-Man, he became better than Spider-Man, and then he felt his life was done and complete, and he took his own life. So that was the end of Kraven for a long, long time. And after that, it was revealed that the Chameleon wasn't just the employer who brought Kraven over to, do the dirty work for him. He was actually Kraven's brother. So they are family, and the Chameleon kind of started to lose his marbles after Kraven died. So there was a whole story following that, but we don't need to go into that. But later, Kraven was resurrected. First of all, he was succeeded by at least two sons. One son was killed by Cain, and the other son went on and continued sort of his father's legacy. But eventually, Kraven's wife and his family resurrected Kraven the Hunter. They had to sacrifice Spider-Man in order to do that. And what happened was Cain, which is why I have Cain on the ludicrously expensive Spinatron 5000, Cain posed as Spider-Man, and they sacrificed Cain to resurrect Kraven. Because through some annoying storytelling reasons, Cain had shrunk from the gigantic hoss of a character that he was down to Peter Parker's size for no particular reason. That was really annoying. But either way, Cain was sacrificed and Kraven was reborn. And the interesting spin on that was, he was not happy about it. It was really interesting. He was resurrected, his family resurrected him, but he was pissed that they resurrected him, because he was like, I was at peace, you mother... I was at peace. I had died. I had found, my peace in the world. And actually, after Kraven's Last Hunt, there was a story called Soul of the Hunter, where Spider-Man has like a sort of a vision of the ghost of Kraven and kind of lays him to rest. And it was really quite moving. And so if you take that as canon, then Kraven is pissed at being alive. He's like, I didn't want to be back here. And the sting in the tail is, because he was resurrected with all this like magic voodoo stuff, he was pretty much immortal now. He could not die unless Spider-Man killed him. And he's like, great, I'm stuck now. So he goes back to being Kraven the Hunter. First of all, he offs his family, which is pretty well, not all of them. It's very convoluted. And then he has his son cloned a whole bunch of times. It gets pretty spotty. But ultimately, we have Kraven and we have Kraven's son. So as a display, because Kraven's son is identical to Kraven, I could have like classic Kraven, and I can see this modern Kraven as like Kraven's son. Because ultimately, what happens is, Kraven figures out the way to die. He can't get Spider-Man to kill him, but he has to die like via the hands of the spider or whatever. So essentially, they love swapping costumes in these stories. Kraven tricks his son into killing him. He puts on Spider-Man's costume and Kraven's son kills him. Because then, like, the spider has led to his death or whatever. So this Kraven is dead now. But his son, at the end of the story, like, shaves off his long hair, trims his beard to a moustache, and he's like, I'm taking the name Kraven, I am Kraven. So, long story short, we still have Kraven, who looks exactly like regular Kraven. So, there you go. But what was I talking about? The figure. God, I went way into the weeds with that story. I hope you enjoyed the ride. So this is a fun figure from the Rhino wave, and it is, as I say, the very modern Kraven. I associate modern Kraven with the skull knee pads. Skull knee pads look badass. Skull anything looks badass. And this is a lovely, lovely figure. I love like the loincloth in the front there. The lion waistcoat looks terrific with the fur on the back. One thing I'll say, the face sculpt, I like the face sculpt, but I would have loved to have had slightly more shading and detail on the face. The face looks a little bit plain Jane. If we take a look at the more modern 2-pack Kraven here, you can see I'm not a fan of how manic his face looks. His face looks crazy, but at least there's more going on there. This looks a little bit mannequinish. The expression isn't mannequin. I like the sort of stoic expression, but it's just a bit too plain. Whereas this one has some lovely shading around the eyes and the gnashed teeth. That looks really cool. So, as a head sculpt, I'm sorry, I'm really gassy today. I drank my coffee too quickly. I prefer that face sculpt coloring. but as a sort of the stoic Tom Selleck looking Kraven, I much prefer this guy. So there's different schools of thought, but again with the detailing, he's got the lovely belt buckle there and the pockets and pouches around his belt. He's got the detailing on the spear. I think the spear has been used with Black Panther and a few other characters as well, but it's cool. It works really, really well. This is a cool, badass Kraven. And actually, that was one thing that was really cool when they resurrected him. Like, he went like A-list. Like, Kraven was resurrected, and he wasn't just a hunter who got beaten all the time. He appeared in the Scarlet Spider series. And if you haven't read the Scarlet Spider series, it only ran for about 20 or so issues, but it was fantastic. It was so good. And when Kraven shows up in that, like, it's on. Like Genghis Khan eating prawns at dawn. Like, Kraven beats and bludgeons Scarlet Spider. And Scarlet Spider's a badass. Scarlet Spider is like the Spider-Man that Peter Parker could be if he just didn't give a you-know-what. So the fact that Kraven could like take him to school was like, whoa, Kraven ain't messing around. So that's a really cool take on Kraven. But ultimately, this is a really cool figure that does Kraven a lot of justice. I won't wax lyrical too long because you can see him. You can see like the great detailing on the armband there and just everything that goes into it. A really fun figure. So the only question left for me to ask is, Super Sorrel, what bar is Kraven?
Dave, I'm so glad you asked what bar he could be. Definitely, I think number 3 would be Newcastle Brown Ale. It's got that brown looking with that nice yellow head top there. That could definitely be a Nuki Brown Ale. It's a great suggestion. I think that would be the perfect drink for our savage friend here. And do you know what? If it was going to come in at number 2, I think maybe even a Neapolitan wafer sandwich. Ooh. But number 1, he's definitely of the wild sort. He's definitely of the wild variety. He's got that brown and he's got that lovely caramel look to the fur in the mane, and he has a furry mane. So let's not. And the obvious jacket there gives it away. I think he is a lion bar. Back to you, Dave.
Thank you, Super Sorrel, for that fantastic What Bar segment. Guys, go check out Super Sorrel on the YouTubes. He does fantastic reviews and features. Why am I telling you this? If you found my channel, then you have definitely found his channel by now. Absolutely fantastic. So yeah, go give that guy a follow if you're not already. Of course you are. So that is the Kraven review. Now we got to take a look at where he stands in the Legends Legacy ranking. Hey, guess what? Funny story. I just deleted my Legends Legacy list. Yup, the one that I was cultivating for the best part of a year. Didn't have a backup of it. No, didn't think to do that. So, yeah. I'm gonna have to remake that. Only about 50 characters that we had on there, but them's the breaks. So yeah, now we're going to go back to past Dave, who thought that he still had the list and had put Kraven on it. So what a dumbass. A very, very well-deserved high up in the ranking spot for Kraven the Hunter there. Now then, with all that considered, I must say I give this figure a sub rating of... I like it! And that is my Kraven the Hunter. But before we go, I almost forgot. Let's do our lovely little figure comparison. Alright guys, it's time for the figure comparisons, so let's do this. First of all, of course, we have Rhino Wave Kraven himself, looking great with his spear there, all kind of badass and stoic. Now I might have to move these figures back a little bit so we can fit everyone in. Then we're going to try and do the best we can for a modern looking Sinister Six. We have Mysterio here next to him, so already I'm going to have to move this back a fraction. But look, these guys look great next to each other already. We have old and new sort of versions, which is just great. Then we have the more recent Green Goblin. I know, not a Sinister Six member, but still, you're talking classic Spider-Man villains. Of course, you gotta have the Green Goblin up there. Then we have the Raft Sandman. Yeah, I know the Build-A-Figure Sandman is like way better looking with so much more color, but just to, you know, give some screen time to someone else for a change. Then we are gonna include the yellow, the more modern looking Electro, which since the retro Electro came out, I still love saying retro electro. I've got so much more time for this modern looking one now with his bald head and his crazy eyes. I really dig that. And finally, we have the modern chameleon, which is the only chameleon we have. I would love to have a more classic looking chameleon. I'd love a smoking jacket chameleon. That would be a lot of fun. But I don't think we're going to see that anytime soon. Then again, we get so many random figures all the time. Who knows? But in the meantime, guys, there he is, my Kraven display. And actually, while I've got you here, let's do a little Kraven comparison with old and new Kraven, with the Rhino Kraven and with the Kraven's Last Hunt 2-pack Kraven. So I did a little sneak peek, but just to have them both side by side, there we go. We have the classic looking Kraven with his spiky belt, which is probably really impractical, and then the more modern iteration of Kraven there. And as I was saying, I much prefer the shading and the paintwork on the maniacal looking face, but also I think of Kraven more as that kind of stoic, sort of, I don't want to say stoic again, I need to get a thesaurus, but you know what I mean, that kind of look, whereas like that's not what I think of when I think of Kraven. So I prefer this character overall, and I've really had a kick out of doing this review, because sometimes doing these reviews, it's like free-form jazz. You never know how it's going to go. You got to just be in the moment. It's like the Miles Morales review, I was like, I'm just not feeling this. Whereas this one, I was like, skibidi-boop-bah. Hey, I really like this figure. I hope you've enjoyed this review as well, because I know I'm having a good time. And folks, that's my review of Kraven the Hunter. What do you think of Kraven the Hunter? Comment below, let me know. I just realized that with all the Spider-Man retro figures that have come out, I pretty much have like a modern Spider-Man display and an old retro Spider-Man display. So I've got these guys out so that I can make a separate shelf for my modern looking Sinister Six, which reminds me, we really, really need a white suit Dr. Octopus. Hopefully this year, that's what we'll get. In the meantime, though, guys, that's all done for today. But of course, we have to... I almost got through the entire episode without smashing things. We have the Data Blast coming up. And I've got a special musical guest. We're getting big time now. A special musical guest. The fantastic music of the band producers She Killed in Ecstasy, or Ski for short. Really cool sort of ambient, badass. I don't know anything about music, so I wanted to say like jazz rock kind of stuff, but I don't even know what to call it. What I will call it is something at the top of my playlist right now. So, She Killed in Ecstasy. Go check them out on YouTube. Fantastic music, and your score for the Data Blast coming up next. So until next time, folks, keep displaying model behavior. Hello, Marvel Legends. As you know, I'm a professional actor, and there's not been many opportunities for me to act or perform over the last year, and this coming year doesn't look too good either. So I gotta get this out somehow, and what I'm gonna do is a dramatic reading of Transformers the movie. Alright? So at the end of every video, you're gonna have a little excerpt of me reading and doing the voices and the stage direction of the script of Transformers the movie, because why not? At least I'm being kind enough to put it at the end of the video. So if you're not into that, you don't have to sit through it. But if you want to come along for the ride, then by God, jump on the ark and come join me. Folks, till all are one.
Fade in. Exterior, space. A small planet glows in the light of its sun. Suddenly, we hear a loud rumble and see a thick electronic mist behind the planet. Then, the electronic mist begins to engulf the planet, and we hear the horrible sounds of destruction. Almost like somebody or something is eating it. Push down to exterior, the near side of the planet's surface. Strange robotic creatures scramble around the planet in a wild panic. It looks like Pompeii must have looked as Vesuvius erupted. Angle on one of the creatures. The creature is Krenix. We will meet him later on in a very different context. But for now, he is running from the ever-growing mist that threatens to engulf him. As Krenix runs, another creature, Arblus, calls to him.
Transform and flee, Krenix! You must warn all you meet of the horrors of Unicron!
Suddenly, the pitiful creature is surrounded by the strange energy cloud, and it looks like his body has simultaneously caught fire and been doused with acid.
Arbalus, no!
Angle on Krenix. The mist threatens to engulf him too. He transforms into a small rocket ship and takes off. As we rise higher and higher into the atmosphere, we see the horror wrought by the hideous and still mysterious Unicron. The planet cracks like an egg, and rivers of lava leak out. The energy cloud surrounds it and dissolves everything. And when the smoke clears, we get our first look at Unicron. It is horrifying. A massive metal orb with gaping maw and a field of electricity. Pan forward to show that this hideous planet is on a direct collision course with...
To be continued.
Chill. Yeah.